my message today is pretty much that too. It's called the disillusion of earthly successes and pleasure. Can you say that for me, please? The disillusion of earthly successes and pleasures. You know, a disillusion is like you thought there was something in there. You really were looking for something more in there, and then you find out I made a fool out of myself. There was nothing there. Though everybody's out there looking for success. Success is like everybody wants you. Unfortunately, some parents want you to succeed in the world more in God. Some places, if you're succeeding in the world, you're making money, you got a career. I don't care what else you do. Just bring me those diplomas. Bring me these big checks. Bring me these big checks, these big diplomas. But if you're succeeding in the world, you make all the money and you lose your soul. So Ecclesiastes 2:11 says, "And then I looked at all the works that my hand had done at work, and at the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and a chasing after the wind, and there was no profit under the sun." Hallelujah. I know some people here are already on the outside of the conveyor lane, which is going to school, getting graduate and work. I mean, they were looking forward for, glory, glory. They didn't know something called tax. Something called tax. You heard of a number you made. But where is it? They swallowed it up. They don't give you a choice to say, how much you want to give? Come on, how much you want to give? And there are other names, mustards like student loans, another mustard. Several mustard, just keep biting it, and you're left with nothing. You see? So there's a lot of disillusion in life. The disillusion of earthly successes and pleasures. Jesus says, "For what profit is it to a man?" In Matthew chapter 16, verse 26. "For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?" I'm going to go to what a person who was a fool wrote in Ecclesiastes 2, verse 10 and 11. This guy says, "I'm going after it. I got money, I'm going after it all. I got to see what life has." Ecclesiastes, Solomon says, "I denied myself nothing my eyes desires." When I'm going shopping, I just shop and shop and shop. Whatever you like to do. If I go for the ice cream, I want all the brand of the ice cream. Things like that. "I refuse my heart, no pleasure." Look at a guy. "I refuse my heart, no pleasures. My heart took delight in all my works, and this was the reward of my labor when I see how much I get, how much I make." In verse 11, "Yet when I surveyed all that my hand had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was," read it with me, "meaningless. A chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." I thought if I had all the wishes of the world, servants, everything, I thought if I had it all, I'll feel a certain way, a different way. I got it all. See, some of you feel miserable, but Satan is telling you because you lack things, that's why you're miserable. Because you don't have this, you don't have that, that's why you're miserable. It's not true. Here's the guy who had it all and was still miserable. So it's not something you lack. It's not the car you don't have. It's not the car you don't drive. It's not these material things you don't have. Because here's a guy who had it all. Servants. And not every, but a lot of young men think of female like, "Man, this girl, I like her, I like her, I like her." Solomon had a whole lot of them. and say life was meaningless. So even if you had all the girls you saw on TV that you like secretly, you have crushes on, that you never have, even if you had them, you'll still be meaningless unless you put God in the equation. Whether or not we put it in writing or acknowledge it, we all have philosophies of life. That philosophy of life governs how we approach life. In all our endeavors, we have a philosophy of life. People lie a lot of time. They say they're Christians, but when you see how they live, they're not Christian at all because their philosophy of life does not reflect that of a Christian. We measure the degree of importance, what's important, what's not important, and all things based on our philosophy of life. What's important? This morning somebody was coming to church. How important was it to come to church? One. How important was it to come to church on time? Okay? And then they give you 1,000 excuses. Why? You should understand that it was difficult for them to make it, but I don't know how. Tomorrow morning, they're going to be able to make it at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock at work. Can you follow? What makes this person who could not come to church at 9 o'clock able to clock in at 5 o'clock tomorrow? Don't they face the same problem? It's a matter of importance. Not showing up, you lose your job, you can't pay your mortgage, you lose the car, you lose money, you lose. Not showing up to church, you lose. What you lose, you don't even count it. You understand? You don't even count it. That means it's not that important. So our philosophies of life is a replica. It's a replica of our mental or spiritual DNA, the real person you are. Is how you think. What you think is who you are. How you think is how you are. So every action and every thought we formulate is filtered through our philosophy of life. Our dreams and our aspirations are the reflections of our philosophy of life. What you want to do. Why you want to do that. What do you want? Why you want what you want. Why is it important? It's based on your philosophy of life. No one can function properly outside of the scope of his philosophy. You cannot be at war with your own self. You have to be in tune with the philosophy that you've adopted for your life. We may claim to be Christians. Many people claim to be Christians, but your action, your real action shows that if you're Christian, you like 20% Christian or 30% Christian or 50%, if that is possible, or 60%. And some people who call themselves Christians, it's just by saying it, but their actions show no real, there's no reflection of Christianity in the action. So because of our sinful nature, everyone's philosophy of life is foreign and contradictory to what God has intended it to be. But God has intended your philosophy of life to be, your present philosophy of life is wrong. Mine is wrong. Because in our philosophy of life, we kick God out. We're in the center of our lives. Everything revolves around us, around our interests, what we want. But the proper philosophy of life is that we are created by God. He put us on this earth. We revolve around what He wants. See, if God is not in the center, whatever philosophy of life you have, it's wrong. Because you revolve it around you. What's good for you? So the life philosophy of the unregenerated person is not far different than that of the animal kingdom. See, in the animal kingdom, the primary aims are what? You see, I don't see animals going to psychiatrists, psychologists. They're happy. They're flying around. You look at the birds. They're just happy. They don't know what's called bill. They don't know first of the month. They don't know first of the month. They don't have car bills. They don't have insurance. They don't have anything. Yet they're happy. They're happy. They just live. So in the animal kingdom, the primary ends of lives are survival, food, shelter, safety, dominance. They like to fight. Sexual pleasure. They love sexual pleasure in the animal kingdom. And they're not ashamed of that. They enjoy that. Reproduction. They will have nests, reproduction. Selfishness in the animal kingdom is a means of survival. My food, your food. They're always stealing from each other. Kind of trying to get by. I don't know how a little mouse can be so smart. When you have a mouse in your house, you have to read a book to see how to catch that mouse. And sometimes I do everything. I will do A, B, C. The mouse still smarter than that. I have to be extremely smart. I mean, you should see how I catch some mouse. I have to do something they will never think, because everything I think of, they beat me to it. One time, I had a big rat in our house once. But I know how. Because I was transferring the garbage. Instead of going outside the garbage, I went through the house. It might have fell in the house. Well, I know somebody's scared now because they're not accepting. And that big rat is inside the house. It's a smart rat. It's not like any rat. It's a rat who was raised on the street. Smart rat. And I put glues here, glues there, glues there. In the morning, the rat will put all the glues in one place for me. Don't put these things. I don't like. He will go, grab them, put it in the center. Every one of them, everyone says, don't try these little things on me. I'm not a new rat. See, the natural man is it's called the merely intellectual man. These are the terms that the Bible uses to describe the behavioral pattern of the unsaved person, the natural person. When you say, in some Bibles, they'll call them the animal man. But English doesn't call that. In French, they say l'homme animal, the animal man. But you can be intellectual, but if you're not spiritual, you behave just like the animal kingdom. In some translation, it's rendered to mean the animal man, the man whose behavior coincides with that of the animals. They behave the same way for their own safety. In 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, it says, the merely intellectual man, you know what he does? He rejects the teachings of the Spirit of God. To him, it is mere folly. You come, I can't hear this Bible stuff. This religious stuff. I don't want nothing to do with this religious stuff. You hear people say that. I don't want to talk about the religion. Oh, man. I don't want nothing to do with this. Some people will do that to you. He's a merely intellectual person. He's not a spiritual person. He rejects the teaching of the Spirit of God. To him, it's mere folly. He cannot grasp it because it is to be understood only by spiritual insight. So you have the opportunity to read the Bible and understand it. It's an opportunity because the natural person doesn't think it's important. You say, if you die going to hell, there's a guy who says, I want to go to hell because that's where all the beautiful women are. It's like I'm going to party in hell, because he doesn't know what hell is. When you get in hell, you're just going to be dancing with skeleton. Fine. You're not going to be dancing there. What would look good in there is going to be fine. But he says, I want to go to hell. Unfortunately, many professed Christians continue to exhibit. They are still under the control of the old nature. Many of the philosophies of life that people adopt come from the world. The world has its own mold. It tells you what's important, what's not important. And some of them picked up a lot of their philosophies of life from their families. Some families are proud families, educated family, whatever social class the family come from. That's where they picked up their philosophies of life. Some other people, they don't make much of them. They just say, I'm black and I'm proud. What are you proud of? You didn't make anything to be black or white or yellow. What you proud of? What did you do to be proud of? How did you get to be so beautiful? How did you get to be black? I love being black. But what did you do to be black? I know a lot of people try to be white by putting a lot of serious. I'm black apart. So some people get their sense of worth or philosophies of life through their country of origin. If you're from a rich country, you think the poor country is and a lot of people like that. And a lot of people, because of their skin color, they feel that they're important, more important than other people. And some people pick their philosophies of life from their circles, professional circles. We the engineer, we the doctors, we the, I heard a guy say, we from the intellectual community. A Haitian guy would say, we from the intellectual community, we don't understand, we the intellectual, we think a certain way. We the aristocrats, the top of the society. Sometimes people pick their sense of worth from the neighborhood they live in. Anyway, so there are social engineers too that are out there to influence the way you think. I am so shocked. When I came from Haiti, I was already 18 years old. And when I come to the States, I don't understand how they function, because I was already completely formed in a certain way. All of a sudden, people were rushing. I say, I'm diminished. I feel diminished. I feel less. I was supposed to feel more, but I feel less. When I go to a store, I have people think I'm stealing. I used to have all that respect, more respect. So some people, if you don't even know that there are all kinds of molds preparing you to feel, to think a certain way. When we moved from Boston to Memphis, Tennessee, I was shocked to see how people, the racial people think, how blacks think, how white, from the church when I was in the school, I was shocked. And there's a teacher who said, guys, and he was honest from the seminary, he says, guys, even if you don't admit it, if you live here in the South, we have problem. It's in us. We have problem in us. We have it, we breed it, because discrimination was so severe in the deep South. So out of the many engines of influences that are in our world, the Creator God is also competing to steer the thinking pattern of mankind toward righteousness. God wants us to dump whatever our philosophy of life is, to adopt His, because He's the Creator. He knows exactly how we're supposed to behave and what's supposed to have importance. And today we're going to examine a man who has adopted several different philosophies of life at different stages of its existence. We'll exhibit the life of Solomon to show the disillusion of earthly successes and pleasures. The sad thing about Solomon is, like, sometimes I would say Solomon because I confuse it with French, but it's Solomon. The thing with Solomon is a guy that at various stages of his life, he kept changing. And that's the thing you don't want to happen to you. Solomon, let's take a first sample of Solomon. The first sample of Solomon, initial philosophy of life of Solomon. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 6 to 9, Solomon, a young man, now they ask him David says, you will be the next king. He was young, he had many older brothers, but he was the guy God chose to be the king. His biggest problem is, how can I be the king? I don't know nothing. I don't understand how to run kingdoms. Nothing. And Solomon said, when God went to talk to Solomon, says, ask me anything you want and I'll give it to you. Solomon said to God, you have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth and in righteousness and uprightness of heart with you. And you have continued the great kindness for him, and you have given him a son to sit in his throne, as it is today. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant so humble, your servant king instead of my father David. But I'm a little child. I don't know how to go out or go in. I come in. Lord, I don't know nothing. I don't have experience. And your servant is in the midst of your people who have you have chosen a great people, too numerous to be counted, to be numbered or counted. Lord, you give me great responsibility, but I don't know nothing, Lord. You see, that's the initial Solomon. Therefore, give your servant, this is what Solomon needed, give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? All Solomon wanted was God's favor, God's wisdom, God's protection. That's a humble man. When Solomon came to power, he was a humble man. Like you are humble now. You don't have big checks. You're not making 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 a week yet. Look how humble you are. You're not driving those big, how do you call them? Those cars, expensive cars. Look how humble you are. But can God trust you with riches? Can God trust you with glory? So Solomon was a spiritual man. Solomon preferred God's wisdom above riches and honor. Solomon was only mindful about leading the people of God rightfully, and he was also mindful because he had a temple to build. This thing, I need to judge the people right. I need to build the temple of God. What am I going to do? Solomon was very reverent to God at first. Solomon, God was very pleased with Solomon at the beginning. He gave him wisdom. He says, because you didn't ask for these other things, you asked for what's more important. God gave him the wisdom he was looking for. God gave him wealth. God gave him respect. God gave him glory. God gave everything to Solomon. But can Solomon stay the same? Can you remain the same after God bless you? Solomon did not remain the same. He changed. He shifted his philosophy of life. The shifting of Solomon's philosophy of life. With the high accomplishment of Solomon, because of his great wisdom, with that came fame. You see, Solomon didn't seek fame. He was trying to survive at first. Now, he's the king that everybody wants to be with. Came fame, pride, and Solomon see that the girls really like me. They really like me. And fantasy. Solomon's military successes turned him into an emperor because he had people respecting him everywhere. He became not just an average king, but he was the big king in the region. Solomon was also a great musician. You see, he was filled with gift. He was a great musician. He was a great poet, songwriter, agriculture expert, management expert. He was a great designer. And with all that success, pride entered Solomon. And when pride entered him, he began to undermine God. And it was forbidden. The same God he says he will revere. God says, don't marry a foreign wife and from another country. And you are the king. He's the number one person who should never have done that. But forget about what God says. He's already rich. He doesn't need God anymore. Are you with me? Solomon felt that he didn't need God anymore. And he started marrying them. Solomon became obsessed with self-love and kept adding wife and concubine in his collection. I mean, that was a collecting. He was collecting women. If you're beautiful, Solomon, go by Solomon. He'll collect you. And then the ladies were lining up coming to Solomon. He took care so well, took care of them so well. He had 700 wives. Solomon had 700 wives. That's not enough. He had 300 concubines. The wives, he had them legally. The concubines, like side girls, side girls. Solomon becomes self-absorbed, so self-absorbed that he taxed the people. He make people say a lot of tax to sustain his fantasy life, his life of fantasy. And Solomon did something terrible. Solomon began to practice open faith. You know, open faith is an insult to God. Now, it's not just God who has the truth. The truth is everywhere. Solomon being somebody in quest to know. Now, he wants to know what the Muslim has to say. He wants to know what the Buddhist has to say. He wants to know what the pagan has to say. He wants to try voodoo. He wants to try New Age. He wants to try everything. He's his own person now. He doesn't need God anymore. He's not a little child who needed wisdom now. He is a great king. He has everything. He has money. He has power. He has women. He has people at his feet everywhere. And now he started to practice open faith. Not only did Solomon give himself the freedom to explore pagan religion, but he set out to build temples for these foreign gods in the Holy Land of God. That's the biggest insult. He is now done building the temple of God, and which gave him a lot of fame, because what he built, the temple of God. But now he began to build other temple for other gods. He's building temple for other gods now. When he became a little sober, he wrote some nice things in the Proverb, Ecclesiastes, and sung a song of Solomon's. But by the time he was old, he was too far gone. Solomon was too far gone. And until this day, many of pagan practices are rooted with Solomon. Idolatry. A lot of people find new religion based on Solomon. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 3, it says, and Solomon had 700 wives. Princesses, they don't count the princesses. That means he had more than 1,000. Princesses and 300 concubines. Because they put princesses by themselves, means he might have had wives, princesses, 300 concubines. That means 1,000 plus. And what happened? And his wives turned away his heart. His heart was no longer. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, of course. And his heart was not loyal to God, his God, as was the heart of his father David. The vanity of earthly pleasure. We found a guy who became very rich because God. See, how you're going to become rich is because God favors you. Now, are you going to favor God when you become all that? His wealth, the wealth of Solomon, we talk about. Solomon had in 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 14 to 15, and Solomon gathered chariot, horsemen. He had 1,400 chariot, 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities. And with the king in Jerusalem, he had much more. And also the king made silver. He had so much money, he made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stone. As you will see a little stone, that's how much silver and gold the country had. He made cedar tree, a rare kind of tree. He imported so much of it. He made them so abundant like the sycamore, like a regular tree you will find in the Holy Land. Honor. Solomon had so much honor. So he went over all the kings from the river to the land of the Philistine as far as the border of Egypt. All around of Solomon submitted to him. That's how much power Solomon had. Prestige now. But Solomon took 13 years to build his own house. He finished all his house. He built his house from the forest of Lebanon. His length was, all that big house, the big mansion that Solomon had. You can read it yourself. So the vanity of prosperity in this world. Jesus had to say, the Bible has something to say when people keep going after this thing that the world go to. In 1 John 2, verse 16. You know what it says? For what is in the world, what is in the world? Why people are going to the world? People refuse to follow God. They're going in the world. What's in there? The lust of the flesh. You're trying to satisfy the flesh. Pleasure. The lust of the eye. You want to accumulate the pride of life. Me, myself, honor. These are the three things in this life that people go after. You see, let me say them. The lust of the flesh. You want fun. You want pleasure. The lust of the eyes. You want everything that you see. You want it to be yours. The pride of life. You want respect. You want people to respect you. The Bible says these are not of the Father, but it's of the world. That's of the world. That's not of God. Many in our world today are following Solomon's footsteps in search of happiness by accumulating wealth and by being thrill seeker. Solomon was accumulating wealth and being thrill seekers. They'll end up in the same valley, in the same pit of vanity and disappointment as Solomon went. By the time Solomon became old, he had a profound distaste of life. A man like that, this is yours, that is yours. You worked throughout 700 wives, 300 concubines, and you distaste life? Everybody's trying to be like you. Everybody wish they were you, and you yourself, you distaste life. He thought that life was meaningless and vain. Look who's talking. I mean, you know your problem. You wish you were Solomon. Even if I don't wish I had all these women, but I wish I had this money. Don't you wish you had Solomon money? It's all vain. It's saying that I'm trying to be like you. I'm saying it's vain. So the guy you're trying to be like is saying that there's nothing up there. There's a guy who's trying to, climb. He says, I'm trying to get to the ladder in his career. So he managed to get top position. He felt, I lost all my friends. It's lonely up there. I lost all my friends. Everybody wants me down. Everybody's trying to pull me down. It was safer down there. So there's nothing up there in case you thought there was something up there. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2-3, Solomon says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Nothing makes sense. It's just rubbish.
Yes. Amen.
What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toiled under the sun? In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 10, Solomon says, there's nothing, is there anything of which may be said that is new? There's nothing new. Everything we see has already been there. Now that's a secret. I'll give you a secret there. Because Solomon was such an avid Satanist, he knew the underworld. A lot of these things you see now, they already exist in the underworld. Someone says, this thing you think you call is new, it already exists. There's nothing new. The earth is just a rewind. There's nothing new. It's just boring. I got it all. I wanted to know God. I know God. I wanted to know what the devil is made of. I wanted to know what pleasure is made of. I keep looking forward. There's nothing new. There's nothing to live for. When you live simplicity, when you live the place where God placed you to be, you're not going to be happy. You can only be happy within the confine where God placed you.
Amen.
Outside of it, there's no happiness. Don't think this person is more happy than you.
Nope.
That's another thing. Don't ever think this person is more happy than you just because you see them with something you would like to have.
Amen.
Some of them will not tell you they wish they were you.
Yes.
The person you think you would like to be like you. And people worship Satan. You know what happens when you start worshiping Satan? You start seeing demons. Demons are the most ugly things ever. They're the most heinous things you don't want to see. But because you are so curious, you go to Satan. And then when they start worshiping Satan, God, okay, you wanted to see, they open that eye. That third eye that's not open is for your own good.
Yes.
That's for your own good that God doesn't open that third eye for you. Because you're going to see despicable things trying to grab you, you know. And these people can't go under the sea. They're afraid of everything because they see so much because their third eyes are open. Solomon not only sought fulfillment in material accumulation, he tried sexual pleasure to the fullness, all to no avail. He sought to acquire great amount of knowledge in many different fields, but still he felt empty. Solomon invested himself deeply in occultisms, in his unending quest for knowledge, but he became the more miserable as he tried. But the Bible has the good philosophies of life. When we read the writing of Solomon, we must be careful to understand that Solomon is talking from a guy how you think of when you are under the sun. And you need to understand, although the word is inspired, sometimes God will show you how people around you think. And some of the writing of Solomon reflects that. But God says in Proverbs, Solomon was saying good things. He says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That's the young Solomon. In all your way, acknowledge him. He should direct your paths. Do not be wise to your eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil, and it will be health to your flesh and strength to your bone. Except Solomon could not follow his own advice. If he followed this advice, he would be such a happy man. But he has no control. He had to have what he wanted to have. He had no bound. Believers are to be well grounded in the Word of God so that we can draw philosophies from it. Otherwise, we'll keep shifting from one philosophy of life to another, as did Solomon. In conclusion, as we conclude, I'm rushing to conclusion. I see everybody's patient is finishing. So people's battery is going down. I can tell. Even people who just came, just telling me, Pastor. Okay, so as we conclude, I want to bring in some words of Jesus as our prime example, because he's the embodiment of wisdom. Jesus says, what a profit to man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul. Make sure you don't gain the whole world and use your soul. For what it profits to a man if he gains the whole world and himself be destroyed or lost. That's another translation. Matthew 6:19. Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust can destroy, but break and steal. People can steal, but lay up treasures in heaven. There's a way you can live where you think of heaven. Jesus is not encouraging us to be careless, to live carelessly, but he's telling us there's far greater importance to put heaven first in your philosophy. Think of this life as something you're only going to live for a short time. Afterlife is for all eternity. That's where your big investment should be. Thrill seekers are always in need of more thrill. And in exchange for the same or less or zero satisfaction. You take a little drugs, a little marijuana, cigarette, finish, no thrill, no more thrill on cigarette. Let's try marijuana. You know, I go where they sell marijuana. I thought this thing will not make money. It makes more money than supermarket. People can find money to buy a supermarket. That's how much money those marijuana people are making. You know, marijuana is not good. You see, you have to tell cocaine. Cocaine is not good. I don't know the other names because I've never tried any of them. Okay? There's a place in your soul, in the human soul, in the soul of the human being that can only be filled by a meaningful relationship with your Creator. When you have a meaningful relationship with God, that's the only satisfaction you're going to get in this life. At least successes and pleasures. At Disillusion. When God is not at the center of your life, all these things you're trying to get, they're not going to do it. I mean, people buy first car. When you buy your first car, I mean, it's like an idol. When I buy my first car, it was not new. It was a very used car. But I check like 10 times to see if they don't steal it. I go to the window, and I go back to sleep. I go to the window. After a while, I forget that this guy exists. It was just the news wheel. So the wealthy people die trying to accumulate more wealth because they're still looking for that gratification. People who are promiscuous usually die alone because they hurt so many people trying to find love. They go from one person to another person trying to find love. And because of their insatiable sexual drive, they're hurting a lot of people. They have children here, they never take care. Children here. All of them hate them. I did a funeral not too far ago, and everybody was there except one of the child of this person. And I say, he didn't have children, he has 10. He made them so mad. None of them showed up in his funeral. You know, a promiscuous life, how that can be. You just dump him. Maybe, I don't know this person's life to know why. But it was not okay for a funeral of a person who has 10 children and for none of them to be present. Something was wrong. Ecclesiastes 2:10 says, I have denied myself nothing. But even if that, I see everything is vanity. And the last thing is, what do you have to do in this life? Seek first. What do you have to do in this life? Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And everything else will be added. Everything else will line up. And you'll be happy. See, I'm happy now. I don't have to have a lot of money. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy with little. I'm happy with big. And something I have, when I go to work, I'm more happy than my boss. I always to work places, I see the face of my boss, always stressed, always afraid, always people are trying to get his money. And I mean, if he could steal my joy, he'll steal my joy because he's, good morning, can't even, sometimes he goes without saying good morning to people. So much in his mind. And I'm free. See, don't see a bunch of blank in somebody's hand thinking that they're happy. You may be the happiest person. And when you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, trust me, everything else will be added unto you. May God bless you. Sorry for the length of the message.